Fáilte. Today, by special request, it kind of started as a bit of a joke and became a challenge. So I did ask in my partner John's Facebook group, the Dagda's Hearth, if anybody would like help with pronunciation regarding the Dagda. And then this came up, which is a very complicated Old Irish Rusk poem, which even today is being, argued over the translations of it and all the rest of it. So it was kind of said jokingly, just do a pronunciation guide for the names of the Dagda poem. And I was like, yes, challenge accepted. So once I figured out that it was in Old Irish and I probably, I'm going to pronounce it well. Okay, so disclaimer, I speak modern Irish, so my pronunciation is based off of our living language. So the pronunciation guide that is given for Old Irish, bearing in mind that we don't have any Old Irish speakers currently living, so at best the pronunciation guides for Old Irish are educated guesses, very well educated guesses, but still educated guesses based on, linguistics and all the rest of it, and the best estimates of some of the greatest minds of Irish scholarship. Anyway, regardless, what we do have is modern Irish, which I pronounce in my dialect, which is a bit of a mangle of Connacht and Munster, so which is pretty much standard school Irish, actually. So there are difficulties, as you can see, just before we even kick off in the video, there are difficulties with pronouncing anything in Irish, even if you are a native speaker. So when you get into the Old Irish territory, it's effectively a different language. So anything that you see that follows will be my best approximation, but it's definitely going to be better than somebody who doesn't speak native modern Irish. Okay, so we'll go with that. But I did put together just this really quick slide presentation just to make it clearer, because I find that when we're dealing with the Irish language, it really helps to kind of see it on the screen. So this particular translation that I'm working from is, well, the source of it, first of all, is Cá Má Tíre, which is edited by Elizabeth Gray, put together by Elizabeth Gray way back when. And then the translation by Isolde Carmody from the wonderful Story Archaeology podcast. And if you don't know of the Story Archaeology podcast, definitely go and look at the blog and look up the podcast on your podcast player of choice, because you will not be disappointed. You can go to storyarchaeology.com and do donate them a few quid, because they do all this for free if you can afford it, and definitely spread the love if you can't. So, give back, right? So this particular article is the names of the Dagda, where Isolde has translated, well, I believe this was Isolde's first translation, because just last year we put together an anthology. So I'm holding up a book which has a wonderful image by Wolf Mercury Photography on the front. It is called Harp, Club and Cauldron. And it's an anthology, A Harvest of Knowledge. And it's an anthology published by Elan Otter Press here in Ireland and edited by myself, Lora O'Brien, and Morpheus Ravenna. And within the pages of that wonderful, wonderful book, full of such fantastic scholarship and personal practice and all sorts of delightful goodies. Honestly, if you're interested in the Dagda, you need to look that up. Within those pages, we do have a very extensive breakdown of this particular Rusk poem by Isolde Carmody. So she goes kind of above and beyond within the pages of that book, even better than she has done here. But we're just using this as a rudimentary example. Not that her work is rudimentary in any way, shape or form, but compared to this, it absolutely is, because she really went in depth. So I'm going to make me smaller, get me out of the way here so we can see the screen. So just before we start, a note on the language by Isolde Carmody. As a Ruska, the language is necessarily dense and obscure, open to reinterpretation and various readings. This is partly the structure and function of the poetic form itself, and partly due to the older language being more preserved in poetic parts of the text rather than the surrounding prose. And that's something that Isolde speaks about on a very regular basis, and definitely something that I ascribe to. Now, we do have another good resource, Morgan Daimler's Pagan Portals, the Dagda. So I'm holding up a book here, a thinner book. Pagan Portals are quite digestible in their size. And it has a wonderful image of a cauldron on the front over a fire in a kind of a leafy glade, shall we call it. And Morgan does go into a little bit about alternative translations or expanded translations on what we're going to see here. So those are fantastic resources if you want to dive a little bit deeper. And we will have some more resources at the end of the video too. So let us begin. The names, as Isolde has broken them up, are Far Ben Bruach. So the translation that she's put on that is man of peaks and shores, or man of horns and big bellied. So Far Ben, so it's, Far is still the modern Irish, it's F-E-A-R, so Far, and there may be a H in there in modern Irish, so that would be Far Ven, and then Bruach. And like I said, there are multiple different options and translations, but we're just, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to go with what's here. Next is Brugal Brovija. Brugal Brovija. And Isolde's translation there is large lapped farter. So you're going to see some of these epithets, some of these names for the Dagda, or descriptions of the Dagda, are going to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek. And that is very much how his character comes across in the stories. And this particular story, or this particular part of the Codmachura that this is taken from, is where he is having an interaction with the daughter of Endak. And there's definitely a lot of kind of horseplay going back and forth there, and there's a lot going on. My partner, John on Scaly Biog, has done a modern version of that story, which is definitely worth looking up. And I'll put a link in the description below to that. He has it up on his blog, but he also has it on his Patreon in an audio version as well, if people want to go and have a look at that. But so we have Far Ben Bruach and Brugal Bruvija. And then next is Curvid Cack. Now, cack is related to shit, basically excrement. So I'm not sure why Isolde hasn't put that in here, but I just wanted to, add that little ditty to your understanding of this term. So curvage cack, and that translation there is cutting all or cutting mountains. And my favorite, personally, is Rullag Bullag. And I just love, so it's translated as great lying bag. Bullag also means belly. And again, this is the older Irish form of it, but it's like, I always kind of, in my brain, it always kind of translates as roly-poly, and it's just, it is that kind of Rullag Bullag. And that's very much the Rusk, the lyrical kind of nature of the poetry, that the words just flow really when you're kind of reading it all out together, and it's a speaking spell basically. So next we have Laur Kjörka Divri. So that is the talkative hen from the hill, Laur Kjörka Divri. And I like this one because it's not a cock, it's a hen. And in the stories, the Dagda never seems to be afraid to take on what would, maybe be classed as women's work, or, like not the big kind of manly man stuff. He does all the big manly man stuff as well. And I know we're talking in gender stereotypes here, but obviously from the time, gender stereotypes abounded as well. So you did have kind of feminine or effeminate traits being dismissed as negative. That's from the lore as well. So that was definitely a thing back then. I mean, back then could be any stretch through the periods, but we'll give it a general back then as well as now. So this talkative hen from the hill is, it could be read as being, I suppose, patronizing, but my sense of it is that the Dagda wouldn't mind being called a talk. Like, he'd be the first one in with the gossip and, talking with the other hens in the hill. And I just, it's a close second favorite from Rulloch Bullock for me personally. So a little bit more serious, Olahar. I'm not sure about that one actually, but the translation is great father of beings. So Olahar Ba. I presume that that's related to the modern Irish of life, kind of, which would be Baha. So they must come from the same root. So we call it Olahar Baha, the great father of being. And then next is Achan Mehi Breachra, regeneration of the world of dry land. And Bree there is definitely related, as far as I know, is related to the kind of the hostelry aspect and the hospitality. And Achan is kind of, it's an odd one so for pronunciation. Achan. You could say it Afghan, but I think it's more a h sound than a t sound, personally. So Afghan, Mehi, Breachra. And again, this is my modern Irish approximation of pronunciation. So I personally believe that anybody coming at the gods in a modern pagan context who are coming with a genuine heart, having kind of made an effort to learn these epithets or these names that we use for them, and to say them in a way that's not going to sound offensive or like wrong. Not offensive is the wrong word, but like, this is why I think the pronunciation is so important, and why I do so much kind of free stuff. And do subscribe on the YouTube channel and check out the rest of the pronunciation videos, because there's definitely more coming. So hit that bell for notifications. But one of the really important parts to me about the pronunciation is that like, our magic is oral. Our spells were spoken way long before anything was written down. And when you hear somebody who doesn't have a sense of the Irish language, who hasn't kind of grown up with it, when you hear them pronouncing, it's like the emphasis is in the wrong place, and it doesn't flow in the same way. And that's, so like, the specifics of the pronunciation are not as important as getting the rhythm of it right, if that makes sense. So don't be getting too hung up on, which dialect is correct, and, whether an MH should be a V sound or a W sound. Don't worry too much about that. Get an ear for it, and, listen to some Irish language media, listen to native speakers pronouncing these words, and do your best to just mimic the flow and the rhythm of it as much as possible, because, as a native speaker, it's jarring to me when I hear the rhythm wrong, if that makes sense. So our gods are from us. My sense of it is that would be jarring to our gods as well, and that they would appreciate the effort, So this is why I do my pronunciation videos, and this is why I really appreciate anybody who is actively trying to get the pronunciation right. And I really feel like, for whatever it's worth to you, I really feel that the gods appreciate it too. Because, if you think about, somebody who arrives into your country who doesn't speak your language, and they're coming in and they're just blah, 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 you know, and they're not really giving a shit about making an effort. Where if you sit down in conversation with somebody who doesn't speak your language, but they are, you know, genuinely listening to you, and it doesn't matter if they're fucking up or not, because they are actually making that effort. And I really don't want to see the language dismissed out of Irish paganism. I think it is such an important, integral part of our spirituality. Anyway, I'm going off on a complete tangent here, but important stuff. So this is our last one, the names. Trí Carvage Roch. So that's 3 chariot wheels, and Roch is pretty similar, and that's still like a Ruther is a bicycle still. 3 and Carvage. And in a lot of the old Irish, I do know that the Shevu that we have in modern Irish, so the H that kind of softens like the B's and the M's, isn't, and the G's isn't in a lot of the old Irish. So my brain kind of inserts it, so that's where I'm getting the Carvage, because I pronounce that a BH as a V sound. So 3 Carvage Roch, 3 chariot wheels. Reverie, Ria, Scatfa. Reverie, Ria, Scatfa. And that is enumerating judgments, but literally Ria Scatfa means king of speech. And, you know, it's beautiful and a little bit more formal, I think. And then the last one kind of doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't have a modern kind of approximation for what these words might be, but I'll give it my best go. Afta, Olafa. That's Afta, Olafa. Refusal of the great ebb. So, like I said, I know that there is a lot more information into what those names would mean in both of these wonderful, amazing books. So do go and check out those Dagda resources. And that is the full title of the book. It's Harp, Club and Cauldron, A Harvest of Knowledge, a curated anthology of scholarship, lore and creative writings on the Dagda in Irish tradition, edited by Lora O'Brien and Morpheus Ravenna. And I would also like to give an honourable mention to the irishpaganschool.com, where you will find Dagda classes if you're interested. So there's currently, at time of recording, there is an introduction to the Dagda, and there is a class on the Dagda tools by, as far as I know, Ireland's only public Dagda priest who is, you know, working and teaching. So that is Anscéla Beag, who I mentioned earlier, who is my partner in life and in business. And, you know, we do a lot of work, both paid and free, to ensure that the old gods are being honoured, and, you know, that the education is available around the Irish ancestral traditions that we work with. So hopefully that has been useful to you, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video and share it, and, you know, give it a thumbs up and a comment. Let me know what you thought of it, and, you know, be kind. So Gura Magat Agus Long Gafal.